What is Make Birth Free? What's the proposal, and why is it something that conservatives should consider supporting?
Yes. Make Birth Free was a policy paper that we put out just the week of the March for Life this past January, the 50th anniversary of the March for Life, 50 years of marching for life. And we thought to ourselves at AUL, now that Roe is gone, now that Dobbs is here as a new paradigm, what are pro-lifers going to do over the next, frankly, generation? It's going to be at least a generational fight to actually abolish abortion. It took us 49 years to get rid of Roe. It may take as long, ultimately, to really abolish abortion, let alone, again, not even speaking about some of the other social issues on that spectrum of human right to life issues that must be confronted and addressed. But we thought to ourselves, what are we going to do that's not just what we get characterized for unfairly, I think, stereotyped as like, oh, they're just about bans, restrictions. They just want to prohibit everything, right? That's what the left would say. That's what pro-abortion folks would say, ignoring the crisis pregnancy centers and all those other good things. And we said, we need something affirmative, life-giving, that supports the mother, but also that looks to connect the pro-life movement with the larger concerns of the family, the American household, community life, and the common good, right? And so these are the big, broad ideas, but we really said, like, abortion has for half a century riven the American heart. It's literally eliminated tens of millions of Americans, brothers and sisters who should be here right now with us, working alongside us, right there on the metro, going to school, living lives, having families of their own, and they're not here, right? And so we said, we've got a crisis, though, as well with fertility rates, with family formation. There's a social science point that's well known, which is that pick any family, no matter how many kids they have. Say you've got 3 kids. You and I both have 1 child so far, right? Thanks be to God.
Yeah.
And imagine that that's all the Lord provided for us. 1, we would still wish, right? Naturally, oh man, would have been great to have 2, right? Would have been great to provide a little brother sister, right? That is a well-known phenomenon in social science where people will say whatever number, they might have 7 kids, 10 kids. They say their ideal number of kids is always 1 more than they actually have, right? Isn't that a wonderful testament, by the way, to just the human nature to love and to nourish, that we see how good children are? We want more. Why not? Why not have another child? Wish we could, right? And so that idea is something that is studied. It's a sociological reality. But we said we can actually use public policy to help bring about more children for families. That's what Making Birth Free is about saying to public policy stakeholders and to the American people that Congress has a role to support mothers, families, and communities by making birth free at the point of delivery. So we're not naive, starry-eyed idealists saying we're just going to somehow wave a wand and eliminate the cost related to pregnancy or childbirth. Yeah. What we're saying with Make Birth Free is that the direct cost should be eliminated to families, because birth, pregnancy, childbirth, the whole process is unlike anything else in medicine. In any other case, you're going to the hospital because you've got some kind of malady. You've got a condition that you've got to get looked at, right? You're not feeling well and you got to get checked out. Birth, certainly there are high-risk births, and those need hospitalization for certain reasons that are underlying. But those underlying reasons were underlying reasons. They weren't something that was uniquely surrounding the birth of the child, or the pregnancy. And so we said, pregnancy and childbirth shouldn't be treated like everything else. The whole cost, right? You think about of copays and deductibles with private insurance plans. The whole reason that those exist is because they want to try to disincentivize people from needlessly utilizing care. Yeah. Right. And so you think of like the hypochondriac, right? They want to go to the doctor every month, right? Yeah. Just make sure everything's okay. Well, why is it that we would have copays and deductibles to discourage kind of frivolous use of healthcare like that, limited resources on the doctor's time, the nurse's time, the material goods? But when it comes to childbirth, we say, yeah, we should keep those copays and deductibles. We should make sure that people have skin in the game financially for childbirth. It's an aberration. That's all it is. And so by eliminating those costs, one of our proposals in the white paper is we say, just do what the Affordable Care Act did for things like contraceptives. even sterilization. A lot of people don't know that. The ACA makes sterilization a no-fee procedure in many cases, which I think is crazy. So it's
what a culture of death. Like, that is so terrible.
Right. We actually have existing state policy. We have a precedent through the ACA, through federal healthcare law, that incentivizes people to not have kids and to never have kids again, and so that's why we think it's so natural to talk about making birth free. In a certain sense, what we're doing is leveling the playing field. It's kind of it's an okay result, but I think the best case scenario is not just leveling the playing field, but actually tilting it back in favor of goals for life, which is helping American families come together and realize that from the first moment they realize they're pregnant, husband and wife, man and woman, can go and get that OB appointment and not pay. We paid like $60 copays every time we went to our OB, right, for each of those appointments. And the $60 adds up. The cost of the birth adds up. American birth costs are uniquely expensive in the world. The highest rate in the world, about $19,000 at the top end, and an average of about $3,000 to $5,000, even for people with good insurance.
Yeah,
that's insane. That's insane that we accept a de facto state-endorsed tax upon families for the arrival of each of their children at precisely the moment when those families should be most financially empowered to plan for their future thriving. Mm-hmm. But instead, too many conservatives, even as you say, not that many, fortunately, but some conservatives look at that and they say, well, but for the state to intervene, for the state to get involved in federal healthcare spending, that would be socialism. And some friends of mine, right, have raised that concern, and like, God love them, the U.S. spends more than $1 trillion on federal healthcare spending currently every year. The U.S. government at a national level is already so involved in directing so many facets and aspects of healthcare policy, you wouldn't believe it. And so just at the most broad level, the idea that making birth free, that eliminating those direct costs through something like an ACA-style mandate to insurance companies, not the government even in that paradigm, is socialism, is, I think, frankly, probably the most charitable view is that people just haven't actually thoughtfully engaged the policy paper. It's only 8 pages. It's a very fun read. Yeah. It's on AUL.org/makebirthfree. But that's an example where there are these kind of brain worms, even for some on the right, that just for them, when they hear like government doing X, in other words, people electing representatives to enshrine law, and they say, oh, that's socialism. And it's like, we just got to get past that paradigm. Yeah. It's not 1981 anymore. Our problem is not like, Carter style stagflation. It's not, overregulation. We don't need more decentralization. We actually just need the proper wielding of political power for enacting good policy in a centralized way, right? That's what the whole purpose of the state is about, is making sure that people are not preyed upon. I think Senator Vance stated that so eloquently in your episode when he spoke to Make Birth Free. He used that great $10 phrase, immiserated, that insurance companies or the government shouldn't be in a position to immiserate families by slapping them with some crazy expense, some insane expense of like, oh, you went to the wrong anesthesiologist. It's $20,000.
Yeah.
It's out of network.
Yeah. We, when my wife and I, when we were going through our birth class and everything, it was like something like half the birth class was about how you can avoid, the crazy charges like that. Like things like, seriously, if they bring an anesthesiologist, asking them to wait out in the hall until you absolutely need it, because otherwise it's going to be like a $10,000 charge or whatever. So the costs are absolutely insane to be sure. I'm curious to hear about, the and if you could speak to what something like this would cost as well, I think that would be helpful. But how would this impact the different stakeholders? Everyone from, insurance companies and hospitals to families with a desire for many children to women having children out of wedlock. What's the impact to all the different groups that have an interest? Yeah.
That's a great question. It's a broad question. I'll do my best. I think the most direct impact is that it would make pregnancy and childbirth a default for America in a way that it has not been for a long time. And there's no question that state policy can't solve it overnight. It's not a silver bullet. There are plenty of examples of governments across, you can just look since 1500. I mean, France tried this still when they were still under the monarchy of incentivizing childbirth, fertility through certain social prestige, through certain incentives, because each culture at a certain point has the problem we're facing now, which is decreasing fertility. And whether you want to pinpoint the reason for that as out of control costs that make it impossible to have a family in a place like Washington, D.C., right, where the average property is like $600,000.
Yeah.
It's like, tell me about how you're going to have a big family, right?
Isn't that only for like condos too? Like if you're going to buy an actual brownstone, it's like $3 million or something like that.
No, I know. In Arlington, right, there are all these wonderful like post-war little ranchers and things that were put up, and I guess GIs and so forth, we're getting those houses, like Sears Roebuck type houses.
Yeah.
And you're seeing them get purchased for like $600,000-$700,000. Demolished, and then like a $2.5 million, 5,000 square foot, 6-bedroom house is being put up for, whatever, the lobbyist or something here in DC who can afford that, but who probably doesn't have 6 kids. Yeah. So it's like, what are you doing with it? Anyway? Yeah. But these are all great examples of the situation we find ourselves in, where we really need to change what we're doing, because trying is really half the battle. So we first need to resolve to try. Change, do something different. And so making birth free, I think, would affect a lot of different groups positively. To this question of cost, we, again, in our policy paper, we outline a few different methods of implementation. Can kind of pick your preferred method, as our approach is. We're talking with people on Capitol Hill. We are hoping to see congressional action on this. Our boldest approach, this is what I argued for in a debate recently with Megan McArdle of the Washington Post at Catholic University. Our boldest approach at AUL is like, you're going to the negotiating table, ask for the world, right? Like, why negotiate for less initially? See what you can get. So what we've said is, the one plank in our policy paper says you can do this through the government. You can have essentially like a Medicare for pregnancy. If Medicare for all is too much for you, if you don't want to be in with Bernie Sanders and those guys, just do Medicare for pregnancy, which would essentially expand existing Medicare and Medicaid policies. Currently, those programs already make birth free for nearly half of the population. A lot of people don't know that. But it's all done in kind of a wonky, means-tested way, where it's like, if you demonstrate that you are financially indigent enough, then begrudgingly the government will come in and will help eliminate some of these costs that are mostly made up anyway. And so we realized, like, if this paradigm is already working for nearly half of the population, we can expand it. And so that would be that approach, the kind of Medicare for pregnancy approach or Medicaid approach, would be the government coming in, and a cost for that would be something like another $50 to $60 billion a year, which we think would be a great investment, frankly. Yeah. We noted in our policy paper, we spent about double last year in supporting the war in Ukraine. Whatever your feelings on that issue, there wasn't a debate about that. Yeah. Right. And so that people now are looking at this and saying, like, half that much to make birth free for American families. We've got to have a serious debate about this. It kind of gives away the game, I think, a bit about what our priorities are with finances and social ends. But so that's kind of the big, bold approach. It would do other things. It would create a benefit like a Social Security style payment for families, so that for the first year or two after the child's birth, that family would get monthly payments. Think of like the stimulus payments that many got during the COVID pandemic. And this would do that for families with children. So again, not just eliminating the direct costs, but actually also supporting them so that they can, whether they want to put that money into a Vanguard 529 or whether they want to use it to buy a stroller, they'd be able to do that. And yeah, we'd be using tax money to incentivize this, the same way we use tax money to do all sorts of things like pave the roads that we all drive on because we're a society. Yeah. So this is one of those areas where it raises for folks who hear that kind of stuff and they kind of like, sit up and they're like, what is this about? It helps them, I think, helps us as a whole community get back to this idea of like, the political community is ordered to the common good, which is not the greatest good. It's not the thriving of some or the elite or whatever, or the privileged, but all. And so in that sense, it's a travesty, we think, that, right now you have to sort of, we know many people, as we were researching this, there are lots of instances of people who will be working 2 jobs or something and doing pretty well, but they realize like, hey, it's actually because I'm kind of on the borderline. It's actually cheaper for me to quit one of those jobs and take fewer hours of the other job, so then I can qualify for Medicaid coverage for my pregnancy. Like that's pretty messed up.
What do you think the impact would be? I mean, I'm assuming it's generally positive, but I think I've seen these, studies done where, the number one reason why, people decide to stop having children or whatever is the cost, how expensive it is, not just, throughout childbirth, which is obviously an insanely expensive process, but even child rearing. What kind of effect do you think this would have on just the general fertility and growth of our nation?
Yeah, it's hard to say with certainty because I think my take on kind of our fertility crisis and the family formation crisis is that there's definitely a major economic aspect to it, right? People who have been taught, trained, whether by their family or by their universities or whatever, don't even think about dating seriously or having a family until, you've got that partner level track or whatever the thing is, right? And that has misled so many because they end up like in their 30s or even 40s and they're like, okay, I think I'm ready to finally have a kid. And they look around and it's too late for whatever set of reasons. So I think as a social signal, I think this is a really important mechanism that would have a positive effect. I don't know for sure how to measure that immediately, but there's no question, again, by creating a new cultural default where it's like everybody knows that there's no cost to have a kid. Like, why not? Why wouldn't you? Why would you wait? If you want them. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of positivity there, but there's also something, as we're talking about this, that I'll read from you actually an article, just a few excerpts from an article. A guy who I was not familiar with before he wrote this piece that came across our radar after Make Birth Free. His name's Alan Carlson. He was appointed by President Reagan to the National Commission for Children. He's retired now, but he wrote a piece for the Institute for Family Studies after we put out our policy paper. And it was really a gift of a piece. He told us about a history that we knew nothing of. And his piece is called The Forgotten History of America Making Birth Free. It turns out we've done this before, believe it or not. And that's what Alan writes about. So he says that, quote, these advocates have actually resurrected a sharp, if now largely forgotten, policy debate over the very same issues conducted a century ago, the triumph and eventual failure of the Shepard-Towner Maternity and Infancy Act. This is around 1919. Isn't this amazing?
Yeah, this is very interesting.
This was like immediately go to Wikipedia and I'm like, is this real? Like, what's going on? And Carlson writes about this. This was, you think about your 1919. You're at the tail end. Your World War I has taken place. There's been this disastrous social dislocation. The communists are just starting to come to the fore. I mean, the world is such a different place, right? And the way that Americans thought about social policy was in such a different place. And so this Shepard-Towner Maternity and Infancy Act was all about doing what we're talking about now, again doing by Making Birth Free. It was a comprehensive program. And so Carlson writes, dedicated to baby saving, the Bureau for Children that was set up organized National Baby Week. Over 4,000 communities and an amazing 1.1 million women took part in baby care seminars and good-natured best mother contests. Love that. So wholesome. And heard orators praise motherhood as a vital element of national welfare. So you see the story of this and you think like, you realize first, it's like how true that is that the past is a foreign country. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, I can picture that, people getting up on their soapboxes and the orators talking about the glories of motherhood and family life.
And why they're the best mother. And
exactly. Right. So wholesome. And so, the critical thing about this was that the act, didn't set means testing or income limits or anything like that. It really was a universal program. It ultimately, he talks about kind of what led to its downfall. But before that, let me talk about the interesting array of social forces that came together to support this Maternal and Infancy Act. He says that the support for this was among the largest and most effective lobbying campaigns in American history. Proponents of the Shepard-Towner bill, as the measure was called, rallied an impressive array of allies, including the settlement houses of Chicago, New York, and other large cities, and their wealthy donors. the hundreds of upper crust women's clubs spread across the land, the League of Women Voters, the Women's Trade Union League. We need these back. The National Council of Jewish Women, and even the Daughters of the American Revolution. The American Medical Association fiercely opposed the bill as the opening wedge of socialized medicine. The AMA called it, quote unquote, sob stuff. However, the physicians, Carlson writes, were overwhelmed by the literal millions of letters that poured into Washington, D.C. And so this led ultimately to being passed overwhelmingly in Congress. It was signed by Republican President Harding, and it went into effect, and it was in place for about 10 years. It ultimately, it started to face problems in 1927. The political winds had shifted. The AMA and other opponents of what was making birth free at the time through this act started to charge that the effects of this were Bolshevistic was the charge. Communist, right? A more maybe sharp-tongued version of that more lame socialism charge.
Yeah.
But the result of this, right, was that this act, which had led to thousands of doctors and nurses being funded basically by the government through this Maternal and Infancy Act to go out across the country in cities, in rural communities, there weren't really the suburbs yet, to educate women about maternal health, about their own health as hopeful mothers even, to show them what were the things that led to high maternal mortality, what were the things that, what were the behaviors that you can change that would help to ensure that your baby's going to be born in the healthiest way. That's what this was all about.